to the cloud. I'm going to spotlight you in a moment,
Okay.
Esther. So everybody, welcome to week 29 of Homemade with TGP. Thank you for coming back every week. Those of you who come back every week, Esther and Zadie, you are more than welcome to come back every week if you want.
Thank you.
And Esther has already volunteered to do more classes. So we're very excited about that. She's doing our blintzes on the 16th.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So
you.
Esther is a friend of mine who works at Shakshuka, Long Island. She's wonderful, and she just recently got engaged. So everybody wish her mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you.
And she's just wonderful. And she also will tell you a little bit about her background with teaching classes and cooking a bit. And so everybody meet Esther. Oh, please mute yourselves. And then, you know, we'll do that whole muting thing and keep yourself muted for, if you have questions, unmute yourself, and then, because the chat does not work here. All right, Esther, here you go. You're spotlighted.
Awesome, thank you. So, like Dina said, I'm Esther, and she was looking for someone to teach Shakshuka, and I was like, oh, I can do that. I grew up in the kitchen. We always, like, family holidays were always about what we were making, as most Jews, I think, will claim. And as an adult, I spent a lot of time cooking. And a number of years ago, the Schechter got involved with a program called the Global Jewish Story, and they were looking for ways to take the concepts of the Global Jewish Story into more parts of school. And I said, you know what, I think I could do a cooking class on global Jewish cuisine. And so my principal at the time, who's now our assistant head of school, said, if you can find the kids to take it, you can teach the class. And so I've been doing it for a couple of years. Unfortunately, due to restrictions in place in our school for COVID, I'm not teaching it this year, but I'm happy to bring you Shakshuka, which is from the North African Jewish community called the Maghreb. There's a fight over where it really originated, but I think we're safe to say that it probably originated at the same time in multiple locations. So Shakshuka is stewed tomatoes with slow poached eggs, basically. And you can make it a variety of ways with a variety of additions. I am a purist, so I will be making this with just tomatoes, onions, garlic, and parsley as the base. But some people put in a lot of peppers to theirs. Some people put in other like intense seasonings. You can make it dairy with cheese. I'm going to add cheese at the end. You can make it meat. You can put in like sausages, or there's a place in Yafo called Dr. Shakshuka. And he does Shakshuka in so many different ways. And it's a meat restaurant. So there's nothing dairy about it. And he does turkey and merguez and chorizo and all different things. So for right now, I'm starting by getting my garlic ready. So I'm going to crush let's push this back a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to crush 4 cloves of garlic here. And then I'm going to do my onion. The onion's going to go in the pan first, but I'm going to crush the garlic with the same knife, and I don't like to have the onion smell on my hands. So I'm doing the garlic first. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll move on to the onions. So I want the onions to be sliced and nicely caramelized. So I'm just cutting off the ends and cutting it horizontally. And we're gonna make nice slices of that. I have a compost bucket here that you guys can't see, but we try to compost our excess vegetable heap stuff when we can. My brother is a major environmentalist, and he's actually getting a degree in writing and the creative writing in the environment. And so we have a compost heap in our backyard, or I should say my mother has a compost heap in her backyard that she begrudgingly let us put there. So we're on to the second onion, and I'm just gonna start slicing it with the grain so that we get the nice even slices that will taste yummy and delicious and not get pieces in our teeth. Here we go. So a trick with onions, if they make your eyes cry, first of all, if you wear contacts, that helps. So if you have the option of glasses or contacts when you're about to slice some onions, I highly recommend the contact lenses. And also, this is anecdotal, but if you keep them in the fridge and they're cold, they burn your eyes less. There's just like less juice that comes off. So we're now good.
We actually learned that fact when we did our potato latke class for Hanukkah. The woman who taught us that, she also a teacher, taught us about the onion in the freezer.
What do you know? Okay, I'm gonna turn my stove on and I'm going to heat this pan with some olive oil. I suggest 2 tablespoons. You really want this to be like nice and rich because there's no fat in it other than the olive oil and whatever comes off the egg. So we're just gonna pour in some olive oil. I'm gonna let that heat up a little bit. My onions are ready to go in, and I'm just gonna now crush up my garlic. Have you guys tried the onion trick? Do you think that it works since she said it? Nice.
I tried it when I made them at home after making them with her because I was her chef. I was the one cooking that night for her because she had surgery, so I had to help her. But I definitely think it works. What about you, Ellen?
Definitely. I've tried it. Definitely works.
Me too.
I've tried
tried
it too, and it works. It does.
Yeah, but you're only supposed to put it in for 5 minutes. If you put it in too long, it gets mushy.
Yeah, you don't want it to get that. Okay, so I'm chopping my garlic, and I want to get it like a little pasty almost. So I'm gonna add some salt to it. So those some big salt crystals, and they'll help the garlic break down. So I'm just chopping and smushing it, for lack of a more precise term there.
Esther,
Yes.
when you gave Dina the instructions that she's going to send us tomorrow, does this include the salting and smushing and all that?
I don't think it includes the salting and the smushing. I think it just says 4 cloves garlic crushed. And I think that a lot of people use garlic presses.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I didn't put it in because I assumed that most people were going to do it that way.
Okay.
However, Dina, I sent you a Word document. So if you want to edit it to reflect that, you're more than welcome to. Okay. My pan is hot, so I'm going to add the onions. And I'm going to let that go for like a little bit. I want it to get nice and caramelized. So got a wooden spoon. We're just gonna give it some love. So my recipe says salt and pepper to taste, and I like to add it like with every layer. So I'm going to do a little bit of salt and pepper now with the onions. And I also think it helps them cook more.
Esther?
Yeah.
Do you ever use a salt substitute?
So I don't, but my fiance is on a low sodium diet.
So's my husband.
So we don't really do salt substitutes because I am on a low sugar diet and most of those have sugar in them. We just like kind of leave the salt out or use much less of it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But again, I'm doing like a pinch, like 1/8 of a teaspoon at this point. So
Well, the tomato sauce already is salty.
yeah. So the tomato sauce that I got, which is also a thing that I check, has this can of tomatoes. Oh, this has more salt than I thought it did. I thought that it said that it had 1% of the daily value, but you can there's a brand called Tommy, P-O-M-I, and it's no salt added, and it comes in cartons and in cans.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So if you were going to be adding peppers, like if you wanted to cook your shakshuka with peppers, I would put them in right about now. Like about 2 minutes after we put the onions in, I would add those other vegetables so that they have time to cook. I'm going to add my garlic now at the same time that I would be adding other vegetables. Here we go. And just give that a mix.
Look at you, look like you're on television.
Nice, stepdad.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Temple Gates of Prayer,
Hello.
or representatives of, I should say. And I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I want a little bit of spicy in this. I told you the recipe itself didn't have anything. I'm adding a little bit of jalapeno. So I'm doing that now so it has time to mellow a bit. No, he's upstairs. And I'm just doing like a quarter of a jalapeno because I don't really want it to be too spicy. I just want it to have that flavor. If you're very sensitive to spice, then I recommend that after you handle a jalapeno, you wash your hands. And I'm gonna go do that actually right now. I don't want to get it anywhere near my eyes. Excuse me.
Our house probably smells amazing right now.
Yeah, no, it smells pretty good in here. So this is coming up nicely.
Do you ever use regular peppers such as bell peppers?
So I will eat almost anything that you put in front of me, but I really dislike cooked bell pepper juice. Like I'll eat them if they're roasted by themselves, but once that juice hits other things, I really don't like it. So I don't like them in this. But I was considering putting mushrooms in. I think mushrooms are great. I was gonna put in, I thought that I bought Kalamata olives, but this is a fake out and it's something else. So I don't want to put it in because it wasn't the flavor I was going for, but I'm gonna put in some parsley as well. And the amount of parsley is really up to you. I like to add it now so it does a little bit of flavoring, but then I'll sprinkle it at the end for the green finish so it looks nice and pretty. I think I put like two, let me see what I put in the recipe for you guys. I put in a half a cup of parsley, right? So like that's a fair amount of it. That assumes that you're putting it in with a cooking liquid, right? Not necessarily only saving it for the top. So since I don't like cooked peppers, but like it's pretty standard for shakshuka, I usually put in a little bit of, I'm gonna call this paprika, but I know most people pronounce it paprika. This is like a constant argument that I have. Apparently people in England say paprika, so I'm not like alone, just on the wrong side of the pond. So I'm gonna add just like a half a teaspoon. And mix that up. And next, we'll start adding the tomatoes. So I'm going to use a can of crushed tomatoes and tomato paste. Now, because this can actually has more salt than I thought that it did, I'm not gonna add any more salt at this point. But if you like your food salty, then you're welcome to. And the tomato paste, I'm adding to the pan before I put the crushed tomatoes in, so that I can make sure that it like breaks apart and it's not like one clump.
How much tomato paste are you putting in?
What does it say? I always kind of just do this by hand. Oh, I didn't actually put it on the recipe. I do a tablespoon and just a tablespoon. It's a pretty strong flavor. If you like it a lot, it's a little sweeter. So if you want to add that sweetness and you're not doing it by peppers, you can always add more tomato paste. In we go with the can of crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna just move my camera so you can see what I see. And I'm gonna just mix that in so that the onions get everywhere. And you wanna give this some time to cook. So I'm gonna leave it in. I'm gonna turn the heat up a tiny bit so it will start like popping, and then I'm gonna turn it down and let it simmer. Now, you can cook the stew, like the stewed tomatoes basically, for as long as you want. I think that it really needs a minimum of 10 minutes for it to like get the flavors, but the longer you cook it, the more intense the flavor will be. And and just taste it, right? Like you'll taste it, you'll see, you can add more salt, you can add more pepper, you can add other seasonings if you like. You want it to taste like stewed tomatoes and not like warmed tomato sauce, right? So you really want to get it to that point where it tastes almost caramelized and sweet. And then at that point, you can take it off and freeze it, right? Like the sauce can stay. Tomatoes are fruit, you can freeze them. So if you make more sauce and you don't want to like make all of it into shakshuka, you want to just do 2 eggs or whatever it is you want to do, you can transfer the majority of the sauce to some sort of Tupperware and put it in your fridge or put it in your freezer and hold on to it. And for sure, if you're someone who's like cooking your sauce for a long time, which sometimes I do, like I like to have that really intense flavor, then you're spending a lot of time on it. So it definitely makes sense to like cook a double batch and put some away. If you like shakshuka, which obviously we wouldn't be here otherwise. So while I'm letting this cook, hearing it bubble a little. I want it to get a little bit more actually before I turn it down. But while I'm letting this cook, I'm just gonna clean up a little bit so that we have less of a mess later.
I have to admit, I never had shakshuka ever.
Oh, so do you like tomato sauce? Okay. Do you like eggs?
Of course.
Like poached eggs?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you've been missing this your whole life. It's now part of your life, and you will experience the joy.
I don't see it too much in on restaurant menus. I guess it has to be like a specific.
Yeah, it shows up really on like I said, Middle Eastern, even though it originated in North Africa, but a lot of that population migrated. So it shows up on Middle Eastern restaurants. And I don't know what was going on at the beginning of quarantine, but everywhere I was looking, there was like some article about shakshuka. It became like this cool thing that people were doing. And I've seen like green shakshuka. You can make it like with spinach. It's just the idea there that you are cooking the eggs in something. And there's a restaurant that I like in my neighborhood on the Upper West Side that calls it
like their version of it.
Yeah, they make it and they call it something like it's like a play on the phrasing of deviled eggs. It's like eggs and devil's broth or something, and there's this kind of spice. But it's actually pretty easy to make. So mine is now like bubbling and simmering, so I'm turning it a little bit lower. Now again, if I had like an hour at this point, I would leave it on a really low simmer and just let it slowly cook. Because we are like under a time constraint. And when I taught this in school also, I was under a time constraint. I'm gonna leave it a little higher than I would if I had like all the time in the world.
Esther, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
When I cook, I usually cook with chopped. What is this? These are which tomatoes? These are crushed. That's what I usually cook with, low salt crushed tomatoes.
Yeah.
But I thought the recipe said diced tomatoes or whole plum tomato.
So you know what? I switch it every time. I also bought the whole plum tomatoes.
Right. So you could use any of these.
You can use any of them. It just depends on what consistency of tomato you're in the mood for.
Okay.
So I bought both of them when I was in the store because I couldn't decide. And I was thinking about mixing them. I was thinking about mixing them together and doing like some whole and some crushed, but then I opened that can and just poured it all out because I
got it.
instinctively made that choice.
And I want to tell Josie, because I know she's always interested. Josie, if I was in my kitchen, I'd show you the can I got was definitely low salt, and it was very low in salt. It was
Oh,
really
that's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, they definitely make low salt diced.
I
and-
love salty things. Michael is the one who's limited.
Or no salt even. I
Yeah,
think.
you could, I mean, you could do this with fresh tomatoes, but that would take a really long time. And I wouldn't necessarily tell anyone to do that now that we live in the age of canned tomatoes.
I'm all for shortcuts.
Yeah, no, this is a really good shortcut. So my mom actually, who just walked past, I don't know if you saw her, loves everything about shakshuka except the eggs. So
Oh my God.
for
That's so
anyone
funny.
who's like her out there, the sauce is really good. You could put it on anything. I'm actually gonna do some double duty tonight. I'm gonna make some pasta and put it on my pasta as well. So, so I'm looking at my pan here, and it's nice and bubbly. I actually think that I want it to be a little bit richer, and I'm gonna add a little bit more olive oil to it. That's like entirely up to you. I just wanted to have that like nice velvety feel. And I think that I cooked the onions a little too high before because I was talking to you and not paying attention, and a lot of the olive oil just kind of like didn't stay in the pan the way I wanted. So I'm adding a little bit more now. I probably added like another teaspoon there. And good. Okay, so I want you to see this. When you look at the tomato, you'll see that it's like almost starting to stick to the bottom, like it's caking itself up. And that's what we want. We want it to get to that, like I said, that caramelized level where it really tastes cooked. One of the reasons that I like cooking so much more than baking is because you can like tamper with it along the way. And it's not like, oh, I put it in the oven, it's done. I can't look at it or it will like explode or deflate, or I bake too. I just don't get to have as much fun with it. Okay, I'm gonna taste this and see what we're working with. Yeah, so that's tasting pretty good to me. I'm gonna give it another minute or so. I'm gonna add a little bit of some crushed pepper. So for the eggs, I know people like their eggs like a whole range of like hard boiled to raw. I like mine fairly runny. So in order to get that like nice consistency, you want to make sure that you have fresh eggs and they should be room temperature. So like I actually came home from the supermarket at around 4 o'clock and I'd never put my eggs in the fridge because I didn't want them to like get cold again. And fun fact, if you're like a frequenter of farmers markets like I am and you get your eggs there, they've never been refrigerated and so you don't have to refrigerate them. Once they're like packaged and processed and they've gone through that refrigeration process, then you need to refrigerate them or they'll go bad. But if they've never been, if they've never been in, then you can leave them out, provided that you're not putting that, like it's in a cellar concept, right? Like it should be cool. You can't leave them out like in 80-degree weather, or even 70-degree weather, I would say. Like you want them to be lower than that. Okay, so I'm gonna start adding my eggs in. And I like to make little beds for them. So I'm gonna just like move this a little bit over here. Back my egg in. And I'm only gonna do 2 eggs because no one other than me wants the eggs tonight. So the rest is just gonna become sauce. But you can put in as many eggs as will fill in your pan. Like this size pan can very easily fit 8 eggs. Okay, so that's up to you. I'm like disembodied voice. I'm also just gonna sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper directly on top of the eggs so that they get that flavor as well.
Esther,
Yes.
I'm assuming since you like eggs that are semi-runny, that you're going to use them like that, eat them like that. What if you like them, let's say I like them over medium. At what point would you flip them over?
You're not ever gonna flip them. So what you would do is, because they don't flip, like it's basically like a poached, like the poaching liquid instead of being water is the tomato sauce. So you're not gonna flip them. What you're gonna do is you're gonna cover your pan and like steam them from the top.
Oh.
Yeah.
About how long?
So I would say you would leave them like, again, it depends on how hot you're cooking your eggs at. So I have them on medium low, but this actually looks like it's boiling pretty hard to me. So I'm gonna turn it down lower and I'm gonna let it, you wanna, again, this is a little bit dependent on the pan that you're using and the stove that you're cooking on. So what you're looking for is when the egg white, and it's a little hard for you guys to see this, when the egg white starts to come up, because like now it's just white underneath it and it's very clear on top. So it's been in for about like a minute and a half now. I would give it probably another minute like this and then cover it for 5 minutes and it should be good.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. If you like them really well done, then you want to cook them for at least 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right, if I prefer to have the yellows harder, you have to keep it covered, obviously, for much longer, right?
Yeah, again, it depends how hard you want them. And it's trial and error. So you'll see, like I said, like the type of pan that you're using is really going to affect that, like how the heat's coming up. But not much longer. Like hard-boiled eggs cook in what, like 7 minutes, between 7 and 10 minutes. That's where you're getting there, right? So I really think that if you want them fully cooked, like you're looking at 10 minutes with it covered. I'm gonna add some goat cheese to it now. The cheese was optional, and I'm going that route. So I got my little Chev cheese over here, and I'm just gonna cut coins, just like rings of it, and add those in.
I assume you're only putting that on the side with the eggs because of the fact that you're using the rest of the sauce for pasta.
I actually put it on the side that doesn't have the eggs because, and I'm gonna cut one more now and put it on the side that does have the eggs because goat cheese is always good and it's good on pasta too. So that's my plan. If you were keeping this for later, right, you wouldn't have added any of this. You would have taken it off right when it hit that like thick consistency. And then to reheat it, you would kind of build it up slowly back to back to that hot temperature. And if you're going to do that, then you should add a little bit more olive oil to the pan again before you start. Okay, goat cheese on fingertips. The last thing that I'm going to do, like I said, is add that parsley at the end for the green.
Is this, hi,
Yeah.
is this what you added, everything? Is it this like the classic? Or these are add-ins like that you decided?
So the goat cheese is an add-in.
Okay,
Everything else is classic.
cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good with the goat cheese though.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, I'll eat goat cheese on just about anything. Really good, by the way, inside of a date. A goat cheese inside of a date cooked in the oven for like a couple of minutes, like on broil, delicious. Okay, so you guys can see what this looks like. Right, and the eggs are still really raw on top, but getting cooked on the bottom, which is always tricky when you're cooking something that's stovetop, right? But just gotta give it some love and baby it.
Looks good.
I like to add a little bit of sauce to the top to like help suggest that it cooks more if I feel like the bottom's getting done before the top's getting done. So I'm just gonna spoon some up right now.
You're spooning it on the white part?
I'm spooning the sauce on the white part that's on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to encourage it to cook a little faster on top. Like I said, you can't flip them. But you want to be careful not to break the yolk. You can spoon sauce onto the top of that if you don't want to do like the steam cooking for whatever reason. I don't really like to do the covered so much because I feel like it always like just passes the point that I want it at when I don't see it. You know, like I never catch it exactly at the right time. So I tend to like to not cover it unless your cover is glass, like it's clear and you can see it. So that's my recommendation. But yeah, it should be super delicious. And I'm gonna give it one more minute and then call it. So can I answer any more questions for anybody?
Esther, what do you usually eat it with? You put it, it's,
So very traditional is to eat it with like just toasted bread, like a nice crusty loaf, French bread. If you're a sourdough person, like that's delicious with it. Um, like I said, I'm gonna make pasta. I actually, I don't eat much regular grains, so I'm making a chickpea pasta. So that's gonna be really tasty. And then I'll just pour the sauce. I'll eat the eggs separately, but I'll pour the sauce, the rest of the sauce on top of the chickpea pasta. You know, when you eat it for breakfast, obviously like toast makes sense. If you're eating it at another time of day, bread still makes sense because like bread's always delicious. And I'm really jealous of the people that can eat it. But it's also good with potatoes, right? Like if you want to just have that extra carb, you want to, I was thinking, I bought some parsnips and I was thinking about trying to make some parsnip fries to go along with it. But since I was cooking for other people for a crowd tonight, I didn't want to be distracted by doing other things at the same time. So I'm going to like leave that for afterward. But yeah, I think it tastes good. Some people like to cook it, like serve it with rice. No one's gonna tell you can't do that, right? Or quinoa is probably also, obviously traditionally it would not have been served with quinoa, but if you like quinoa, that will soak up the flavor really nicely. Yeah. And like I said, if you're cooking it on like the meat side and you're adding sausage, I think merguez is a great way to go with it. It really gets that like nice flavor that like those Middle Eastern spices will come out really nicely in it. And then you can just serve it as like, it's like a full meal really. You've got your fruit / vegetable with the tomato, whatever we're calling that. And that good protein, like a hunk of bread, got it all right there. And your glass of wine. Cheers.
So if you're just, so for one serving, like 2 eggs would be good, I guess. 2 eggs and so in a restaurant, it's just served like in a bowl? Like how is it served?
In a restaurant, it's usually served in like a mini skillet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they'll serve it to you in a mini skillet or
like what it was cooked in?
Yeah, what it was
Almost?
cooked in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably never going to be plated if you're getting it in a restaurant.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, because they don't want to take the risk of breaking the egg. Yeah. So mine looks pretty done for me, right? Like that's how I like it. I don't know if you can see. So I'm just gonna turn it off. And I got in well under 8 o'clock, Dina. Yay. So Josie, it took less time this time around, do you think? Josie was telling me the last time she did this, it took very long.
I don't know what happened. I was doing something with the tomato sauce and it took forever.
You can keep cooking it for a very long time. If you want to, you can make it take as long as you, right? Like just keep everyone waiting, tell them stories.
Not when you've got starving relatives and they're getting pissed off.
Yeah, no. Again, if you're starting with the diced or the crushed or the whole tomatoes and they're already cooked, right? That's definitely a time saver than if you're starting with like a more raw tomato.
Thank you.
I saw in Trader Joe's, I don't know if anyone saw this, they have it, I think it's in the frozen section, a Shakshuka starter kit.
Yeah, a lot of people use that. They say it's very good.
It's good. And I guess
I haven't tried it. I actually, I'm sorry to say it, I'm here for the support, but I don't like shakshuka because I don't like hot tomatoes. But I don't mind tomato sauce, but I don't like hot tomatoes.
So
but a lot of people do like it.
You can make shakshuka. Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm assuming it comes with like the tomato part of it, like all that part, and then you have to add the eggs and the seasoning. I don't know. I just saw it.
I think you would just add the eggs. I think just the eggs.
It might be a seasoned tomato.
Yeah, they call it the starter kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I always think that like the fresh caramelized onions are
Yeah.
a big boon to anything. So you could for sure like get that starter kit and just decide that you want to do the onions first and add that in.
I would try it on my own.
Yeah.
Not even,
Well, most of the people who cook Middle Eastern, there is nothing they make that doesn't start with fried onions.
Right, you got to get those fried onions in there. Like otherwise, what are you doing? But you can make shakshuka. I've made some green shakshukas before with like spinach, and then you kind of cook it and puree it down, so it's like almost like a processed spinach, like a creamed spinach. And then you can add the eggs if you want, like the idea, but you don't like tomato. But I wouldn't add merguez to that. That just sounds odd to me. I would definitely go dairy if I were doing spinach shakshuka.
Well, now that you mentioned the green, can you do it with green tomatoes?
Yeah, you could really do it with anything that will serve as like a poaching bath for the egg, right? So if you're doing with green tomato, I mean, like, I guess you could even like buy a jar of salsa verde and like start there, right? Like can't really get like canned green like tomato puree, but you can get green salsa. And then you can leave it with that Mexican flavor, which isn't so far from the Middle Eastern flavors. It generally has the lemon and the cumin, but you could add a little bit more Middle Eastern flair to like make it taste like start with those fried onions, and then you add your salsa verde, and you've got some fusion food.
Well, thank you so much, Esther. This was so amazing. We really appreciate it. Esther, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you.
Next week next week starts May. It's May next week. Oh my gosh. And May is dairy month for Shavuot. So next week we are learning mac and cheese with Susan Monheit. Wow, wrong Susan. And then we are taking off for Mother's Day. And then the following week, May 16th, we're going to have Esther back to teach us how to make blintzes. So,
I think a lot of people are going to be making blintzes with Esther. Esther,
cheese blitzes.
I want to
Cheese blintzes.
Yeah,
Cheese
Esther,
blitzes.
usually people cook along with you, but I think most people were, I know for me, I told you, it's a breakfast thing. So I was like, okay, I'll watch and I'll do it tomorrow. But but I think blintzes, you're going to have a lot of people cooking along with you.
Awesome. So we'll make the crepes from scratch, and we'll do cheese blintzes.
Oh, very excited.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Dina, it's a little earlier than usual that day because of Shavuos.
Right. So that day we're actually starting at 3 o'clock because Shavuot starts that evening. And Rabbi Biller was like, of course you could do it at 3 o'clock. We need dinner for Shavuot. So,
Good point.
It's very exciting. And I remember back when I was in the 7th grade, I attended an Orthodox yeshiva for a year. And for Shavuot, instead of gym class that day, we learned how to make blintzes while the boys got to play basketball or something. So, because,
Just saying.
I like mine with applesauce. So
Yum.
do you want me to do like an apple compote that day also? Will people like
Mhm.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one question. It's really not important, but can it be adapted to gluten-free? The crepes?
the crepe? Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I am pretty much gluten-free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I will send you the recipe,
Great.
Dina, for the flour ones, and then give you the options for like other people for
Thank you.
The others.
Gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah, because a lot of people are going to ask you about gluten-free and
Grain-free.
grain-free
If you
and
have,
sugar substitutes.
Yeah. So I mean, my gluten-free option will be chickpea flour, because that's my go-to, because the gluten-free flours that are made out of like rice and potato, I can't really do either. So I'm gonna go with the chickpea flour, and then obviously like stevia is what I would like the non-aspartame sugar substitutes are the way to go in my
Right,
opinion. So,
awesome, awesome. So yeah,
Cool.
so if you give me all your substitutes that you would use, that would be great.
no problem.
All right, well,
Okay.
thank you so much.
You're
Everybody,
welcome.
you've received the email about the Japanese, a convergence of Jewish and Japanese cultures, which is starting at 8 o'clock on a different Zoom link. So check your email. I sent it out this morning at, I believe, 10:30.
And
So
thanks, Dina, thank you for bringing us Esther. That's number
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
was
no
great.
problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you, Esther.
after we sign off of Facebook, Esther, please don't leave. I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
But Dina,
Okay, let me stop
so much.
recording everything.
Thank you, Esther, too.
You're welcome.
Thank you.